The year 1914, a year that would mark the beginning of one of the most catastrophic events in human history. A continent on the brink of an unprecedented conflict. Political tensions were high and alliances were fragile. A world poised for change, teetering on the edge of a precipice. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation and dread. World War I, a conflict so devastating it was initially called the Great War, would forever alter the course of human history. It was a war that would redefine warfare and reshape societies, from the mud-soaked trenches of the Western Front to the vast battlefields of the Eastern Front. Millions would fight and die in a conflict that reshaped nations and redrew the map of Europe. The scale of the devastation was unimaginable. This war, a clash of empires and ideologies, was a maelstrom of new technologies, ancient hatreds, and political miscalculations. It was a perfect storm of human ambition and error. It was a war that saw the rise of trench warfare, the use of poison gas, and the horrors of machine guns. The brutality of the conflict was unlike anything the world had seen before. It was a war that saw empires crumble, new ideologies emerge, and the seeds of future conflicts sown. The old world order was irrevocably changed. The Great War was a global tragedy, a conflict that touched every corner of the world and left an indelible mark on the 20th century. Its impact was felt far beyond the battlefields of Europe. Its echoes can still be felt today, in the geopolitical landscape we inhabit and the lessons we continue to grapple with. The war's legacy is a constant reminder of the cost of conflict. This is the story of that war, a story of courage and sacrifice, of horror and loss, and of the enduring legacy of a conflict that forever changed our world. It is a story that must be remembered and understood. The world before 1914 was a world of empires, a world where European powers held sway over vast territories across the globe. It was a time of relative peace and prosperity for some, but also of underlying tensions. But beneath this veneer of stability, tensions were simmering. Political alliances were fragile, and the balance of power was precarious. Nationalism, the fervent belief in the superiority of one's own nation, was on the rise, fueling rivalries between the great powers. This fervor was a powder keg waiting to explode. Militarism, the glorification of war and the military, was also taking hold, with nations engaging in an arms race that only heightened tensions. The stage was set for a conflict that would engulf the world. At the heart of the tensions that led to World War I was a complex web of alliances. These alliances, forged in the decades leading up to the war, were intended to maintain a balance of power in Europe. However, they also created a dangerous situation, where a conflict between two nations could quickly escalate into a wider war. The Triple Alliance, formed in 1882, linked Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. This alliance was primarily a defensive pact, aimed at countering the growing power of France and Russia. The Triple Entente, formed in 1907, brought together France, Russia, and Great Britain. This alliance was formed in response to the perceived threat posed by the Triple Alliance. Nationalism, a powerful force in the years leading up to the war, exacerbated these tensions. Across Europe, people felt a strong sense of loyalty to their nation and a belief in its superiority. This nationalism often manifested itself in rivalry and mistrust towards other nations, particularly those seen as rivals or competitors. Adding to the volatile mix was imperialism, the pursuit of empires and colonies abroad. European powers, driven by economic and political ambitions, had carved up much of Africa and Asia in the decades leading up to the war. This competition for colonies created friction and resentment between the great powers, further fueling the tensions that would eventually erupt into war. The stage was set for a conflict that would engulf Europe and reshape the world. All that was needed was a spark to ignite the powder keg. That spark came on a sunny June day in 1914 in the streets of Sarajevo. Sarajevo, Bosnia, June 28, 1914. The city was bustling with activity, its streets filled with the anticipation of a significant event. The air was thick with tension and excitement as the people of Sarajevo prepared for the arrival of a prominent figure. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie were visiting the city on a state visit. This visit was meant to showcase the strength and unity of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but it also exposed the deep-seated tensions within the region. The Archduke's visit was met with mixed reactions. While some welcomed him as a symbol of imperial authority, others, particularly Serbian nationalists, saw him as a representative of an oppressive regime. The streets were lined with both supporters and detractors, each group vocal in their sentiments. Among those who opposed the Archduke's visit was a group of Serbian nationalists known as the Black Hand. This secret society was dedicated to the cause of Serbian unification and was willing to go to extreme lengths to achieve their goals. The Black Hand, a secret society committed to Serbian unification, saw the Archduke's visit as an opportunity to strike a blow for their cause. They believed that by assassinating Franz Ferdinand, they could ignite a crisis that would weaken Austria-Hungary and pave the way for a greater Serbia. They meticulously planned the assassination, hoping to create a situation that would force Austria-Hungary into a vulnerable position. The conspirators were determined and prepared to sacrifice their lives for what they believed was a noble cause. The assassination attempt took place on a Sunday morning as the Archduke's motorcade made its way through the streets of Sarajevo. The route was well publicized, giving the assassins ample opportunity to position themselves strategically. The first attempt failed when a bomb thrown at the Archduke's car bounced off and exploded behind it. The explosion caused chaos and confusion, but the Archduke and his wife remained unharmed. Undeterred, the assassins lay in wait along the motorcade's route, hoping for another opportunity. They knew that the Archduke's schedule would bring him back into their sights. That opportunity came when the Archduke's driver, confused by a change in plans, stopped the car near one of the assassins, Gavrilo Princip. Princip, a young nationalist, had been waiting for this moment with a mixture of anxiety and determination. Princip, seizing the moment, fired 2 shots into the car, fatally wounding the Archduke and his wife. The shots echoed through the streets, marking a pivotal moment in history. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand sent shockwaves through Europe. Newspapers across the continent blared headlines about the tragic event, and the political ramifications were immediate and profound. It was an act of terrorism that would have far-reaching consequences, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to the outbreak of World War I. The assassination acted as a catalyst, igniting long-standing tensions and alliances. Austria-Hungary, outraged by the assassination, blamed Serbia for the act and issued an ultimatum demanding satisfaction. The demands were harsh and designed to be unacceptable, pushing Serbia into a corner. Serbia, backed by Russia, refused to comply with all of Austria-Hungary's demands. The refusal was seen as a defiant act, and the alliances between the great powers began to solidify. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and the fragile peace of Europe shattered. The declaration of war set off a domino effect, drawing in nations across the continent and beyond into a conflict that would become known as the Great War. The declaration of war between Austria-Hungary and Serbia triggered a cascade of alliances, plunging Europe into the abyss of war. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the spark that ignited a powder keg of tensions that had been building for years. As nations honored their alliances, the conflict quickly escalated beyond the Balkans. Germany, bound by its treaty obligations to Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia on August 1, 1914, and on France 2 days later. The German military, well prepared and highly disciplined, moved swiftly to execute their pre-existing war plans. The mobilization of troops was a massive logistical effort involving the coordination of railways, supplies, and communication lines. Great Britain, obligated to defend Belgium's neutrality after Germany invaded the country on its way to France, declared war on Germany on August 4, 1914. The invasion of Belgium was a critical miscalculation by Germany, as it brought the British Empire into the conflict, adding a formidable naval and military power to the Allied forces. The Schlieffen Plan, Germany's war plan, aimed for a swift victory over France before turning to face Russia in the east. This plan was devised by General Count Alfred von Schlieffen, who believed that a rapid and decisive strike through Belgium and into France would catch the French off guard and lead to a quick surrender. The plan called for a massive German offensive through neutral Belgium, bypassing French defenses along the Franco-German border. The idea was to encircle Paris and force France to capitulate within 6 weeks, allowing Germany to then redirect its forces to the Eastern Front against Russia. The Germans believed that by knocking France out of the war quickly, they could then focus their forces on Russia, avoiding a two-front war. This strategy was based on the assumption that Russia would be slow to mobilize due to its vast size and less developed infrastructure. However, the Schlieffen Plan, flawed from the start, soon unraveled. The logistical challenges of moving such a large army through Belgium, combined with unexpected resistance, began to slow the German advance. The plan also underestimated the speed and effectiveness of the Allied response. The German advance through Belgium, though initially successful, was slowed by fierce Belgian resistance and a determined British counterattack at the Battle of Mons. The Belgians, though outnumbered and outgunned, fought valiantly to defend their homeland, while the British Expeditionary Force, small but professional, managed to delay the German advance. The French, mobilizing their forces more quickly than the Germans had anticipated, launched a counter-offensive at the Battle of the Marne, halting the German advance and thwarting their plans for a quick victory. This battle marked a turning point as the Germans were forced to retreat and dig in, abandoning their hopes of a swift conquest. The failure of the Schlieffen Plan had profound consequences for the course of the war. Instead of a quick victory, Germany found itself embroiled in a prolonged and grueling conflict on multiple fronts. The Western Front, in particular, became a static and deadly battleground. It led to a stalemate on the Western Front, as both sides dug in, creating a vast network of trenches that would stretch for hundreds of miles from the North Sea to the Swiss border. These trenches, often filled with mud and water, became the defining feature of the war, symbolizing the futility and horror of the conflict. Trench warfare, a brutal and attritional form of combat, would come to define the Western Front for the next 4 years. Soldiers lived in constant fear of artillery bombardments, gas attacks, and the deadly conditions of no man's land, the desolate area between opposing trenches. The war, initially envisioned as a short and decisive conflict, had devolved into a bloody stalemate. The hopes of a quick resolution faded as the reality of trench warfare set in, with both sides suffering immense casualties for minimal territorial gains. Millions of soldiers found themselves bogged down in a war of attrition, facing unimaginable conditions and the horrors of modern warfare. The psychological and physical toll on the troops was immense, as they endured years of relentless fighting disease and the constant threat of death.